Every shop owner has fluctuations in sales, and I'm betting that at one point or another you've experienced that momentary panicky feeling where you notice that your sales are down and you start thinking, oh my God, what's happening? While they're slowing down, and what am I going to do about it? And today we're going to talk about this exact situation and the things you need to look at to break down why your sales are slowing down, if you need to do anything about it, and what the best thing to do is for each scenario. Ready? Let's dive in. Bonjour, my name is Deb and I'm the founder of TIZZIT, a membership community for makers and handmade shop owners just like your fabulous self. You can learn more about our community TIZZIT HQ via the link below this video. But for now, let's jump straight into today's conversation: what to do when your sales slow down. There are so many things that can be behind a sales slowdown, and although fair warning, I can't give you an answer like it's because of this thing over here and here's how you can fix it. I can help you figure things out. To do so though, we're going to be a modern day Sherlock Holmes and ask the questions that lead you to the answer. So it's important that you take the time to pause the video if you need, take some notes and answer those questions, because that's how you investigate to find what's actually happening and causing those sales to slow down. Then once you have figured out why your sales have slowed down, you can respond instead of react, which brings me to my first point: don't panic. I know seeing your sales slow down can be a bit worrisome, but I want you to know it's completely normal. You're going to have some slow seasons when it comes to sales. Even the most successful businesses have them. When I work with makers, they generally have one of two common reactions though when they see their sales slow down. One is contracting, right? The first reaction that I see is what I call contracting, and in this situation when your sales slow down you feel bad, so you contract, right? You do less compared to when your sales increase, where you feel expensive and you do more work to keep the sales going. This is a vicious cycle because when you do less, your sales slow down even more, making you do less again, and things continue to get worse. The other reaction I see is the exact opposite, and when sales slow down, you work yourself to death, right? You exhaust yourself and maybe even make some panicky decisions. And this is another vicious cycle because exhaustion and bad decisions can slow down sales further, causing more panic and overwork and so on and so on. So of course it's completely understandable that you would feel one of those two ways, but obviously neither of these responses is ideal. What I recommend instead is to try and stay more neutral emotionally and do two things. The first step is to accept that changes are going to occur. You want to remember that many businesses have a slow season, and that may be all this is. E-commerce has an up and down rhythm, and not every month or season is a good one. If you accept that changes in sales are part of doing business, you can avoid the negative, shutting down or panic responses. Instead of reacting or freezing, your next step will then be to figure out the cause, and that's exactly what we're about to dive into. Once you know the cause of those low sales, you can work through it methodically, you can fix it, or if you determine this is just a slow season and it's not unexpected, embrace the slow season and actually slow down yourself. So let's move on and talk about how to determine the cause of your slow sales. There are two main causes of slow sales. Either your traffic has slowed down, and so because of that, you will obviously have your sales slow down as well, or your actual sales have slowed down even with traffic staying the same. So this is an actual dip in sales. These two things are going to have very different causes and very different solutions. So you need to methodically look over your data to determine the actual cause of your sales slowdown so that you're empowered to take the action needed to bring your sales back up. So let's go through a few examples. In case number one, you suspect the traffic to your shop has slowed down, causing your sales to slow down. The first question that you need to ask yourself is this really the case, right? Is this the main reason why sales are actually slow? If you look at your shop data and see that your conversion rate and your average order value are fairly stable, but the traffic is lower, so naturally your sales have dipped, then you've confirmed that your sales slowdown is coming from a dip in traffic. If that's the case, the next step is to ask yourself if it's seasonal, so if there's a normal or expected reason for it. And if yes, what can you do? If your sales slowdown is seasonal, first you can accept that it's a slow season inside of your business and slow down yourself. Because if you don't slow down in the slow times, you'll never get a wreck. You can also work on things you don't usually have time to work on and prep ahead of time for more active months and more active seasons so that when sales start picking again, you've done that work ahead of time. Another approach you can take is to try and counter these seasonal dips. Start adding different products to your product offerings that will sell during your slow season. That will help your sales levels average out because there is more or less always a product that's selling. What if your drop in sales isn't seasonal though? Now, if it isn't, then you need to look at your stats more closely to understand where the drop is coming from. And this is really where you need to go in with your Sherlock Holmes detective mindset, right? Try not to predict what you're going to find though. Staying neutral here is very important because if you don't, you might miss the real problem. You don't want to assume what's working or not working or what's broken and not broken and make decisions that are clouded by those assumptions. Instead, ask yourself questions that help give context to your sales decline so you understand what kind of decline is happening. Take your time in this analysis and work through these questions. 1, is this a sharp decline or a slow decline? Or in other words, is this a recent or longer term issue? 2, did you change anything in your strategy that could explain it? 3, is it a drop or are you coming off a high and this is just your sales settling back down to the normal level? And finally, were you not getting a lot of traffic to start with and so it's actually more of a fluctuation than a real drop? Once these elements of context are known, then you can dive deeper into your analysis and start looking at your stats for each traffic source to help find what traffic has stopped or slowed down and why. So for example, look at your social media post now versus when you were getting more traffic to your store and ask yourself all sorts of questions like what posts were you posting? What kind of engagement were you getting? What were those posts actually about? What were they promoting, right? What was the tone that you were using in those posts, right? What was your strategy then and how does this compare to your strategy now? If you're looking at Etsy or similar platforms where SEO is more important, you also want to take a look at which listings and which keywords were driving the traffic before your traffic slowed down. Has that changed? And if it has, take a look at the marketplace. Are there more competitors now for those specific listings? And do those competitors have better photos or better price? You're looking at the things that people see straight away when they do a search in the search results, right? Because those photos and prices are what's going to drive traffic to your store. Your goal is to figure out if there are external factors, so not necessarily you, that might explain why you're starting to get lower traffic. Another thing you'll want to do is to look at your sales history to see if there is one listing that was really driving most of the traffic to your store. When this is the case, something that I see quite often is when one product has been the main driver to your store, then suddenly more and more sellers start coming up with a product that's very similar. Soon this one product that was driving most of the traffic to your store starts driving a lot less traffic, and because it was the main driver to your store, it results in the traffic to your store becoming much lower in general. In this case, the problem was always there. It was just hidden by the fact that this product was driving most of your sales. So now you'll need to start diversifying and finding other products that are going to drive traffic so you don't have all of your eggs in the one product basket. Now, question 3 was prompting you to take a look and see if you might be coming off a high, perhaps for one reason or another. And your sales notched up for a month or two, and what looks like a drop in sales is actually just your sales settling back to their normal level. This is happening actually a fair bit at the time I'm recording this video. We've had, the COVID years, let's call them. And in a lot of industries, this means really high number of traffic and sales, and e-commerce really bloomed. And now we are settling back to a lower level. That's still probably a higher level than we were before because COVID has done good things for the e-commerce world. But it does mean that if you're comparing the stats that you have now to the stats that you had at the peak of the COVID years when everything was, crazy online, you're going to think that your traffic and your sales have dropped like crazy, when in fact, this is just the new kind of baseline that you're working with. You also want to be sure that what looks like a drop in sales isn't just a fluctuation in sales. And what I mean by that is when you don't have big numbers to start with, a fluctuation can feel like a big dip, but it's not necessarily statistically significant and doesn't necessarily warrant action on your part, right? So for example, if you had 60 people on average every month looking at a listing, and then suddenly for a couple of months after that, it's more like 30, it feels like that's half, right, the amount. And so that feels like quite a significant drop. But in reality, these numbers are too small to be really that meaningful. If, for example, you had on average 1,000 people visiting that listing and then the next month only 970, you wouldn't really even blink an eye, right? So that's what you kind of need to keep in mind, that some things feel bigger than they are, and you have to remember to look at things in context. Next, I want to take a look at the opposite situation. Your traffic is the same, but conversion rates have dropped. Has the competition changed? If there's been more competition in your niche for your products or for your store in general, or if you have products that were selling well, but they're not selling as well anymore, this often means that standards have increased. So all the things that affect your conversion rate, like photos, descriptions, product price, shipping speed, might need to be reworked. You may have some older products that need updating, plus even some not so old products need a rework from time to time. Now take a look at your traffic quality too. Traffic quality is really important. Many times when you see the conversion rate drop, you think the listing itself is broken, but you have to consider that the type of traffic that you send to the listing is equally important. And what I mean here is that when you look at all the people who click to visit your shop, there are people that are more qualified or less qualified, right? So more or less likely to purchase than others. Let's say that one particular traffic source was driving most of your traffic, for example, Pinterest, and that was giving you a fair bit of sales, but then that stopped and now Instagram is sending you more traffic, and maybe Instagram sends people that are a little less qualified. Maybe they're a little more like your competition checking you out. So that may lower your conversion rate for that reason. The change in conversion rate could come from within each traffic source as well. So the type of posts that you create might change your conversion rate. You might have posts that are more salesy than others. Some may drive people that are really interested in buying the product straight away. Others may drive people to your store that are just kind of checking out your products and getting to learn what you're making and learn more about you. So looking at those traffic sources, the types of posts that send the most traffic to your store, and the type of customers that they're probably sending is very important. When you've had a drop in your conversion rate, you obviously want to work on it, but don't stop there. You also want to look beyond the conversion rate at your average order value and the lifetime value of your customers. It's important to also work on boosting up those two things, right? And not just the conversion rate. I have a video all about making more money from each order, which is exactly about that, and I'll link to it down below for you. Now, this is not going to be a 10-minute process, this whole thing, right? But it does pay off to really take your time and analyze what's happening so you can respond instead of react. Once you have the knowledge of what's changed, you have more power to course correct. So take your time investigating, and based on what you find, choose the best option for your specific situation. You may need to readjust parts of your marketing strategy, create new products, or update current products. You might need to accept that this is a seasonal dip that you can't control, in which case you can rest or prepare and work ahead of time on other things. Sometimes you won't even find a precise cause, and that can be quite frustrating. There are cases where you will have a slower season for sales, but it won't be seasonal and you can't really put your finger on why it is happening. Just remember that every business has its own rhythm, and each business will have slightly different low and high peaks. That is the kind of thing you will see once you've been in business for a couple of years and you have data to start seeing those patterns inside of your business. Sometimes it can be especially hard the first couple of years to detect these patterns unique to your business. And if that's the case, it's just a matter of making sure that you've done your analysis. And if after that you're not so sure exactly why you have a slow season, accept it as it is and either rest up or work on those projects you've had on your list or on increasing your average order value. Most importantly, remember that it's totally normal to have slow times, and it's okay and healthy to allow yourself to slow down. We all need time to breathe and take breaks. It makes us better business owners. Now, if I piqued your curiosity about increasing your average order value, that video is showing on your screen right now, so be sure to watch that next. Thanks for watching. Click that subscribe button, and until next time, au revoir.